father's parents lived in Vienna, where I had to be a little lady. When I grew up, I had to wear patent leather shoes, gloves, I had to wear a hat, and children's clothes, and behave like a little lady. My other grandparents, my father's parents, had moved into a wonderful place near Vienna, which I consider my children's paradise. I loved it out there. And on holidays and weekends and for the summer, my parents and I would go out there, and I would quickly switch into leather pants and pretend to be a little tomboy. In our apartment, I had the birds. My father and I, well, mostly my father, built a big, beautiful cage where I had about 18 pairs of birds. And they lived in the cage, and they were able to fly around and were very happy in that cage, and they laid eggs and they had little ones. And it was just the one bird who was who liked to be alone. He liked to be outside. I had him in a little cage outside. He was the one who had the most beautiful song, and that he greeted me every time I came into the room with. The other birds were very happily living together in the big cage. And then, in addition to the birds, I had a guinea pig that was my very special friend. It used to like to snuggle under my neck and gave some kind of a squeaking and purring sound, and I loved that guinea pig with all my heart. In grade school, there was one particular boy. His name was Hansi, and his grandma was born in France, and she spoke French. So instead of calling him Hansi, she used to call him Henri, which is Henry. And she used to take him to school, and then took both of us home. And Grandma, her name was Urbach, Grandma had a cane that she walked with. And Hansi and I, we were very naughty children. We liked to run ahead and then hide around the corner. And she didn't like that. So she wanted us to walk right in front of her, and when we walked too fast, she would take her cane and turn it around and haul Hansi and me in. Henri, Henri, come back here. Friday nights we usually had Sabbath dinner with my grandparents. Friends and family would come, and we would have dinner. And then after dinner, Grandpa would listen to the radio. At that time, he only had a radio with earphones. We didn't have a regular radio then. And he would listen to the news, and then afterwards, he would discuss the news that he had heard. And a strange thing happened, because as he listened to the news, he became more and more serious. He broke out in a sweat, and he listened and listened, and then until he finally put the earphones down, and he told the adults around the table something that he had heard on the radio, on the earphones. We saw across the street, on the armory that was across the street, the Nazi flag was flying, the swastika. And young men were walking around in uniforms, clicking their heels and boots. Nobody looked at me, nobody spoke to me. And we just went home into our apartment. And I could not understand what had happened. My parents were very serious and didn't explain to me what had happened. 3 stormtroopers came into the house, knocked on the door with revolvers in hand, and told us that we would have to be out of the apartment within 3 days. Like every night, my grandpa came in and sang his Rozhinkas with mandolin to me, his lullaby, and I would say the Shema after that. And he didn't go out, as he usually would. So I said the Shema again. I thought he was not satisfied. And he sang his Rozhinkas with mandolin again. And so it went on and on and on. I thought he wasn't satisfied. As an hour or so passed, we heard the screaming and the thrashing and the breaking down of doors, and realized that something else was going on. That was Crystal Night, November 10th, 1938. And the only one that was not broken down was ours. And when we opened the door, the super came. We noticed that our door had not been marked with a J for Jew. That all our friends and other families, all the Jewish families in the building, had been taken prisoner and brought to wherever we didn't know. In order to get permission to leave Vienna, the Jews had to stand on line. In the cold, it was January, February at the time. And my mother used to go every single day. And they would take their coats off in the cold weather. It made the Jews who were waiting on line scrub the sidewalk with bleached water. My mother's hands and knees were hardly had any skin on anymore because of the bleach eating off their skin. But she never complained, and eventually she managed to get permission for us to leave Vienna. My mother came to Paris also, and then after she had brought her parents to Switzerland, and all three of us came to Le Havre, where the Normandy was, how do you call it, when it's parked on the pier. And my mother, in the last minute, wanted to call her parents in Switzerland to find out whether they were doing all right, to say her last goodbye from Paris before we left for America. And so my father and I went up onto the Normandy alone, and Mother said she would catch up with us after she had spoken to her parents. Came back to the pier where the Normandy was docked. She didn't recognize it because when she left it, the pier was dark. The Normandy, the whole wall of the Normandy, had shut the light out. And now the Normandy was gone. And the pier was light because the Normandy no longer shut the light out. And it took quite a while for Mother to realize that the Normandy was out there in the ocean and no longer docked at the pier. Mother started calling out, "My husband and my child are on the Normandy. I can't stay here. I've got to get back to the Normandy. Somebody has to get me back to the Normandy. I have to travel to America on the Normandy." That somebody in a small boat where there was some leftover luggage picked up Mother from behind. She was a little lady, and put her down in the boat together with the luggage, together with the valises. And there was another man in the boat, and he rowed with all his might to catch up with the Normandy. And they caught up with the Normandy, and they opened up one of the portholes, I guess you call it, and they put Mother in together with the luggage, and they closed the porthole, and Mother found herself in the dark luggage space of the Normandy. And on the last day, I could not resist the strawberries. And I snitched a couple of strawberries. And they were so good. They were so delicious. I can still taste them. And a short while after that, I broke out in the most awful hives. My face, my arms, my hands, my whole body. And it was terrible. And my parents were afraid that the Americans wouldn't allow me to land in America with all these hives, that they would put me into Ellis Island. And I allowed my mother to just wrap me up in as many shawls and scarves and high stockings and gloves and coat and hats and whatnot, just to cover up my hives. And then we landed. And I always used to run and jump and be happy. This time, I held my father's hand on one side and my mother's hand on the other. I put my head down and I walked like a little lamb between my parents, carefully, just hoping and praying that nobody would notice my hives, until we got down the gangplank and were on solid ground in America. And my grandpa, who was a rather corpulent gentleman, when he stepped out on American soil, he went down on his knees and kissed the ground. And then he was too heavy. He couldn't get up. And so from all sides, people came to help him get up. I'll never forget that moment. It was just wonderful. And my father scooped me up and he took my mother and hugged us and kissed us, and we were in America, hives and all.